Planet. I'm Andy Signor, and it's time to review The Irishman. I watched this one a few days back when it came out on Netflix, and I wanted to digest a bit more because I wanted to make sure I had a take, because it's a movie that requires time. You got to sit there and watch this for 3.5 hours. And I'll say right out the gate, I think the Netflix model is not the right model for this movie. This is a theater movie without a doubt. And I wish it had been in theaters longer so I could have gone and seen it. I'm frustrated that I had to watch it on Netflix first. I would have rewatched it on Netflix, but I would have happily paid a ticket to see this 3.5 hour movie because it's really well done. Scorsese is back to form. It's definitely up to par. It's not as good as, I would say, Goodfellas or Casino, but it's a worthy installment. It's not as bad as Godfather 3. It's a worthy installment and it's very good, but I didn't love it like it's his best film ever. I see a lot of the critics coming forward like it's a masterpiece. It's perfect. It's really well done, but I do think it's overlong. I think it takes a long time to get going, and then when Jimmy Hoffa, Al Pacino shows up, things sort of move at a different pace, and then it just sort of meanders a little bit and then gets to its point. And overall, I think he could have trimmed 30, 40 minutes out of this movie, and it would have been a much tighter, effective movie. Now, I know a lot of you out there are like, no way, it's perfect. I mean, critics online, there are 209 minutes in The Irishman, and none of them are wasted. Perfect. It's just that the critics love this movie. And I really enjoyed the movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. But, I think my biggest complaint just comes from the fact that I didn't get to see it in the theaters. And I wish I had. I impatiently went to Netflix because it was debuted there. And I didn't get a chance to see it in the few weeks. I was busy the few days it was available in theaters for that short window. And I couldn't catch it there. And I think this movie, excuse me, this movie is one that requires you to be fully sat up, attentive, and you can't watch like, oh, cool, new Scorsese movie. It's 10 o'clock. Okay, well, I'll try and get through it. No, this is a movie that you need to be awake, attentive, and prepared for, because it's good, it's engrossing, it's invested. But when you're on your couch, distractions come about. People are walking in and out, or your phone blips, or you get tired because you're comfy in your couch. Those types of things I don't think are fitting for this. And because this movie plays like a very long movie, you're basically binging a 3.5 hour, 3.5 episode dramatic series that doesn't really have endpoints, that you have to sort of keep going with it or you lose the attention. And I'll be honest, the first time I watched it, I was hoping I could truck through it, and I couldn't. I fell asleep the first time, and I then paused it and came back and caught up the next morning. And look, I wanted to make sure I rewatched to sit through it and make sure that wasn't a unfair judgment of it. But at the same problem, it was a little bit of a challenge to get through. I think there are moments that are great. It starts great. I love this journey of De Niro, and you're like watching him paint houses, kill people, and he's like earning his way up into the ranks, and you're meeting the people, Goodfellas style. Oh, that's Harvey Keitel. This is a very obvious Scorsese moments that I was invested in, and then, just like De Niro sort of walks around slowly trying to come upon what's next, there's no real like jarring moments where you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? It wasn't like tense for me at all until the end, which I'll get to in a minute. Overall, it just felt like a really important, well done character study. It was clearly like watching the heyday of Scorsese's other moments, because we're seeing it through time. And then really focusing on it starts with him in the retirement community, old De Niro's character. And you really are watching sort of the fact that he's, amounted to nothing. And the regrets and sins he's had to live through really is what makes this movie, I think, a good capper to sort of the Scorsese Mafia trilogy, if you will. And I do appreciate and see what he's doing there, and I like it. It's good. I just don't think it's as strong as the other two installments because it is sort of overly long. And then it makes me think, like, well, why not just make it a show then? Why didn't he just go even longer, make it a 4 or 5 part like miniseries about the back then and Hoffa? Like, why not do it that way? If you're going to go the Netflix model and do the longer format, I feel like that's the better approach versus it's a 3.5 hour movie. I just think now in the way formats of content are shifting, if you're going to Scorsese, you're going to say cinema is dead with Marvel movies, you got to then, practice what you preach and commit to saying, no, this movie has to be in cinemas, because realistically, it should have been in theaters much longer. And I think that's the problem. A lot of fans like me who didn't get the chance to go to theaters right away aren't going to wait. They want to see it as soon as it's available, especially since I have to review it and react to it. And I think that was a unfortunate side effect of this movie. Yes, some people like to watch at home. Others like to go to theaters. That's your choice, etc. But I think people who refuse to go to theaters could have waited a couple more months, end of the year, and then had this drop over New Year's to sort of say, oh, cool, it's now available on Netflix. Surprise. That was fast. Because if it had been through November, December, I would have made a point to go see it in the theater. And I think I would have enjoyed it more because it wasn't getting distracted by my sort of day-to-day couch viewings. And granted, I'm offering a lot of my own personal sort of problems with this movie, but it affected the movie experience for me. And I think this is a movie that you need a theater experience. You need a full invested, lights off. I'm invested in this. I'm sitting up. Let's watch this movie because it requires that type of viewing. And I applaud Scorsese for going there and making it such a important story that unfolds. The acting is great. The de-aging is great. I really didn't have a problem with it. I see a lot of people are like, oh my God, no, as soon as I saw the de-aging, it was gone. I was very impressed. I think it's clearly still at very early days of that technology, but I thought it was a really impressive technique. The eyes were still off. For some reason, I don't know why the eyes couldn't stay the same, because I don't know if they were fake eyes or not, but I remember Scorsese saying a point of like, that's the real connection, but it was the eyes that lost it for me in a couple of the moments. They were too colorful, and it felt like you almost upgraded them too much that they looked more like a video game. But once the movie really gets in, it completely went over me, and I was like, wow, impressive. He did look older in certain parts than I thought he was supposed to. He didn't look like young DeNiro, clearly, but it was a pretty good attempt, and I think a very interesting start to where we are with film, to see someone like Scorsese take these amazing actors like Pesci, DeNiro, and de-age them down so they could really play an entire lifespan. The possibilities that are exciting and potentially scary, but the technology I was on board with. And that was clearly where a lot of the budget came from, because the movie's not that crazy. It's not that expensive. I mean, it's a period movie, but they don't go around doing crazy stunts for the whole thing. It's a lot of just sort of period moments. It's clearly that effects of the de-aging is what costs so much money. And that's why this movie is on Netflix, because no studio would fund it. And so I see why Scorsese did it that way, but I still stand by the fact that I think he should have stuck to his guns and demanded Netflix. No, you can have it Netflix, but we need to be able to get a better theatrical window so people actually see this. You'll make the money. People should see it in the theaters, and then they'll want to rewatch it later. Just like I love Wolf of Wall Street is the latest great one. I rewatched that. I've seen that a few times. It's fantastic and long. Not as long as this, but still long. And Casino, long. Not as long as this, but still works. So I think, I'm not have a problem with length, but there are moments that were meandering for me that weren't necessary. Parts that, feel like you're learning the characters, but I got a pretty good grasp of the characters pretty quickly, and they didn't need to stretch around as long as they did. It felt like someone overstaying the welcome of like, come on, you can be tighter with this. Somebody trim a little bit of the fat. Beyond that, there's complaints about Anna Paquin. She has 7 lines. I noticed it. She didn't really do much. There's some, nonverbal reactions, and so on, but that whole storyline was one I would have rather seen more of, to be honest. And they don't really show us much. It was confusing. Like, where did that mom go? There were parts that sort of, while they take their time and meander, there were other parts that I thought, well, if you're going to do this, do it. Why not do a longer run? Why not do a 5-hour miniseries for Netflix that's cut into 4 or 5 parts? It almost feels like that's what he wanted to do, and why not do it then? But then he can't because he's cinema, and Marvel's the death of cinema. But to me, in a weird way, this movie is the death of cinema, right? It's like the theater going experience is incredibly important because a movie like this requires you to see it in a theater. And by seeing it at home, all of these things I'm talking about do affect the viewing, and they don't make it as strong. At least they didn't for me. That's my excuse for why I didn't love it. I really wanted to love this movie. I thought it'd be a bit more exciting at times, and just like Goodfellas Casino is, even Wolf of Wall Street, there weren't, at the end. So let's get into spoiler territory as I wrap this up. If you haven't seen it and you're waiting to watch, I do encourage you to go watch it. It's a good film. It's a very good film. There haven't been a lot of great films this year, so I do. Will it make my 10th of the year? Maybe, or it might be 12. It's definitely up there. Don't get me wrong, but it's not for me. It wasn't as amazing as everyone else is sort of hyping it to be. It's a very good movie, worthy of watching, but I don't think it's his best. But let's get to spoilers. So if you have seen it, stay with me. The whole movie sort of obviously is about, De Niro's character. And we see it in the beginning, but it's just sort of his ending of sort of like he has no one really to talk to, and he's realizing he sort of doesn't have anybody in his life, and he hasn't seen his kids. That moment where he's talking to his other daughter was one of the most effective moments, I thought. And you're watching sort of this man with the sins he's created just die, and then they're trying to like, come on, can you at least tell us about Hoffa to sort of leave the legacy? And he can't even do that due to his own loyal stubbornness. That was a fascinating, interesting story, and I appreciated that part of the story. As all of these actors in Scorsese age, there's a lot to this movie about sort of just aging and relevance, and the moment where the girl's like, "Who's Jimmy Hoffa?" People are going to say that about all of these actors, about us, people in the world. Like, fame is fleeting. As big as these people were, they aren't as much anymore. Scorsese is not as known, sadly, with younger communities and generations. And so, that hit me. That is, I think, was a very important and probably the best part of this movie and the point of it. But I think, the young, middle-aged moments, you're really watching a man with the De Niro, his struggle with this guy, his loyalty back then. That sort of loyalty doesn't exist anymore. And his loyalty to Hoffa of sort of sticking by him no matter what, because Hoffa sort of really gave him a shot and brought him up in his ranks. That was an interesting story. I was much more invested then. And this struggle of, do I off him? What do I do? All of that, very investing and interesting for sure. Again, I think it took a long time to get there. There were so many moments of, okay, Hoffa, my God, they're warning you as often as they can. You just do not care. And then the build up and it wasn't like exciting where I'm like, oh God, no. It was just more like, all right, come on. For me, that's where the movie wasn't as effective because it was so long and elongated. It didn't have any tense moment towards it. Even at the very end where De Niro finally caps him, it again felt rushed. And then you're sort of he does it. He offs his friend, which he's got to follow the rules of the mafia and go against the loyalty of Hoffa because Hoffa's just pissed everybody off. And that struggle, is really what the crux of the movie is, right? And so at the end, you sort of struggle with him not even be able to admit to the cops who are like, come on, everyone's dead. No one cares anymore. Can you please just tell us what happened to Hoffa? Like, for the family's sake, what happened to Hoffa? And he's still, his stubborn loyalty to the end. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to say anything. That was interesting and frustrating. And, it doesn't make me dislike the movie because it had a frustrating ending. But, you watch the sort of turmoil that he's had to deal with of living through all this and those challenges of do I tell and, who am I loyal to? All of that very relevant to all the other movies of his past, Casino, Goodfellas, etc. So it was a capper. It was a final chapter, if you will, of sort of the mafia and stories that Scorsese told. What's it like for someone like that at the end of their life? And are they regretful? Are they okay with the sins they've committed? Are they miserable? Do they wish they made more amends? Do they wish they hadn't done what they did? You're left with wondering, well, what does he really think? He's talking to his nurses. He's trying to share the stories to whoever will listen, but then he won't say them as extreme as the police are trying to get him to tell. And you're sort of left with, he seems okay to die. He seems okay with what he did. He just felt like an older version of himself, dealing with the best he can. And there wasn't as much, aside from that shot with his scene with his kid, there wasn't much remorse. And I wish we could have seen a little bit more of like what it was. But then at the same time, that's what made it sort of depressing that he didn't even really know what he wanted. So for all of that sort of complicated nature of it, I appreciated it. I liked that. I liked it. It made me I wanted to think about it. That's why I didn't jump to review this film, because did De Niro at the end feel remorse? Was he remorseful of things he did? Did he wish he had done things differently? Did he regret some of the murders that he did? All of those things are questions that I don't think he did. I think he wished probably he had maybe been closer to his kids, because even Hoffa had a closer relationship with his daughter. I think he just, that's sort of the generational Italian sort of style that, he was raised in. So look, clearly, a lot of interesting things come from this movie. I enjoyed it. It challenged me, and for all of that, the great performances, all the technical aspects of the film, it's a very good movie. But did I enjoy it? Do I want to go back and rewatch it again, like I do some of his others? No. I do feel like it has a little bit of a TV feel to it. While the effects are great, the acting is great, and it's definitely an amazing film, it felt like a TV because I watched it on TV and I didn't get to see it in theaters. It felt a little slower, and I don't think I would have felt that way if I had been able to have the chance to see it in theaters. But again, Netflix didn't really allow a long enough window for us to see it. And if you didn't see it when the week was out, or if you lived in a major city, you didn't get the opportunity to see it. So that's what's frustrating to me about the movie is it left me a little bit disappointed due to the venue that the movie was presented to me. Granted, I have a pretty decent sized TV and a nice place to watch it. It wasn't like I was watching it on a phone, which Scorsese has said, please don't do. He said Apple, iPads are okay, but phones are not. But I'm sure there will be people who watch The Irishman on their phone, which is depressing. But my point is, you should give the audience the opportunity to see the film in theaters if you can. And I think Scorsese, it's a little hypocritical to hear him talk about cinema is dead, and then, for Avengers movies, but then not be able to push for his movie to be in theaters longer. That's where I'm struggling. And so I think that bit him in the end because while people are enjoying it, a lot of these critics saw the film in theaters. That's why a lot of them are enjoying it. I know many theaters got more opportunities to see, screenings. I didn't get Netflix didn't do them here in Florida, but most of the major ones got opportunities to see them in theaters quicker, or saw them and had, that's what they did. And I think that really does help the experience. So I'm curious, if you watched the film and you liked it, did you watch it at home? Did you watch it in theaters? Did you have any sort of did it hurt the experience a little bit at all by sort of having to watch that whole 3.5 hours in one sitting at home? Or was that something you were okay with and you preferred it at home? You could still connect to it all. Granted, I probably would have connected better if the first viewing I had done, I had been prepared for something a little slower and wasn't watching it a little tired. So I will admit that's on me. But you got to factor that in. If you're going to make a Netflix film, I want to watch it. I want to see it right away. And I thought it would keep me engaged, even though I was slightly tired, and it didn't. And then when I picked it up in the morning, it's a different thing. I was like, all right, where'd it go? It does tamper the viewing experience. And so Scorsese's got to realize that's what happens. I can't be the only one who felt that way. At the end of the day, though, I still liked it. It was a good film. It's going to be on my, I think probably 12th, maybe 10th. It's definitely not in the top 5. But it's a good, solid film for the year, and I think we'll get Academy Award nominations and other prizes. But what did you think? Where does it stand on your year-end list so far? What else are you looking forward to coming out? Tell me down in the comments below. Hit me up on social media. Let's talk about it. What did you think? Am I being harsh? Do you think it was the perfect running time like all the other critics? Or could it have been trimmed a little bit and still been as effective? I want to hear all your thoughts. Let's talk about it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back with more content very soon and lots of trailers dropping this week, so get excited. That's all I got for you. See you later. Bye, everybody.